So if you want to be successful in the bar, if you go clubbing or something, go online and try to find the person who looks as similar to you as possible, but the one who looks a bit uglier than you. We all came here to change the brain. It's all right. It's okay. Good evening. We are at a cargo venue here, and my name is Gabija Toleikyte. I'm a neuroscientist and performance at work and business coach. And today I'm giving a talk here for Funzing, LDN Talks at night. The talk is called Neuroscience of Decision Making. By the way, have you ever wondered why sometimes we make decisions really, really quickly and spontaneously, and other times we really, really struggle to make the decisions? If you want to get to know why, please come in and you'll get to know, first of all, neuroscience of good decision making and why do we make mistakes. And you'll get to know actually that there is no such thing as purely rational decision making. So come on, why don't you just come in? See you soon. Raise your hands if you made some decisions in the past you're not that proud of. Okay, raise your hands if you're overly emotional while making decisions and make spontaneous fuck-ups. Raise your hands if you get stuck in indecision and with things that matter in your life, you just keep postponing to make decisions. You read books on procrastination, how to stop that. Okay, raise your hands if you just are curious about the brain and neuroscience was the word that got you. Raise your hands if you have some other ulterior motives. Okay, brilliant. I'll talk to you guys after. If we want to change anything in our life, our brain needs to change first. And in my opinion, and I'm a bit biased being a neuroscientist, if we want to create a lasting change in whichever area of our life, we need to understand how the brain creates change and how the brain makes, in this case, best decisions, or makes best relationships in other cases, depending on the topic we're talking about. And a lot of times when we are stuck in the scenarios and repeating the same mistakes over and over again, is because that we keep trying to work against how the brain works. And if there is, like a battle between your desire and the biology is going to win. In order to answer that, we'll discuss, first of all, the concept of fast and slow decision making. Why sometimes decisions are so effortless and easy and almost obvious. We can't even almost explain why we made that decision. And other times, we need to spend so much time and deliberation to make a decision, and we still keep doubting sometimes whether that's the right decision. We'll also discuss where in the brain those two different kinds of processing happen. When we start talking about decision-making process, to simplify our life, we can actually split decision-making into two categories: fast decisions and slow decisions. There is two systems in the brain or in our mind that we can use to make decisions. And at different times, different situations, we use either one or another. So first system is called system 1 or automatic system. And that system is really, really fast. Also, that system is so-called unconscious. We make decisions without any rational deliberation, and often we are not even aware why we made that decision. And sometimes we use the words, it just felt right. Of course, obviously that was the best decision, but we can't quite get the insights into our own internal processing of the brain. In other words, this system actually, it's a very complex system, but we do not have access to how the decisions are made, since that is being made in our subconscious brain areas. So it makes large assumptions, in other words. And that system is quite automatic And it's if we kind of don't put any effort, that system will start making decisions for us. Now, system 2, also called control system, is much, much slower. For that system, we need rational centers of the brain. And we are quite aware what we're doing, actually, when we're making decisions using that system, since that's a conscious process. And a lot of times for that, we kind of weighting pros and cons, which one is better in which scenario. So that system is quite effortful and takes much, much longer, and is quite based on the facts, on gathering the facts and weighting them against each other. Now, so that's just one way to show that actually even when we kind of make seemingly rational decisions where there isn't that kind of strong emotional component as we think, actually our decisions are still quite biased to mental shortcuts or system 1 distortions. So in his book, Descartes' Error, Antonio states that actually we aren't quite thinking machines that feel. Rather, we are feeling machines that think. In other words, as philosopher Descartes was saying that if we want to make good decisions, we have to take our emotions out of the equation. As Antonio is saying, actually that's not realistic. And in fact, he has a lot of evidence to show when we take emotional component completely out of the equation, we're absolutely screwed. Now, these are just a few examples, actually, of different brain areas. There's a lot more. Now, we can actually group those brain areas based on the functions they're responsible for and based on the way they work and how much energy they consume and when they actually evolved in evolution into 3 groups. The most ancient areas we can group into so-called lizard brain, more developed into the mammal brain, and the most developed on the outside of your brain, the wrinkly, disgusting bit out there, into human brain. By the way, I'll actually throw the brain into the stage so you can have some fun. Who would like can't wait to touch the brain? Are you good at catching? Okay, mind your head. Wait, oopsie daisies. Okay, so send around and you can actually, disassemble the brain into a couple parts and so that bit on the outside, that's the neocortex or the human brain, the smartest areas of the brain. Now, by the way, this hypothesis was created by a scientist called Paul MacLean, who was a freak who loved actually comparing animal brains and human brains. And he wasn't the first to notice that we have a lot of areas similar to the animal brains. But he created this model and he developed all theory based on that. And up to this date, we know that actually areas grouped into the lizard brain, these are the ones we need to thank every single day for keeping us alive. These are the areas which, first of all, control your breathing, control your heartbeat, and digest the food you've eaten today. Now, mammal brain areas a little bit more developed, as the name implies. Mammals such as dogs, cats, cows have these areas as well. Other name for it, called limbic system, is these are the areas responsible for your safety, to keep you safe and away from danger. And the way the mammal brain wants to achieve that is by following the same old way. As a result, mammal brain creates habits. And when we try to change the mammal brain, tries to resist that. Also, certain centers of memory are in the mammal brain, and our emotions are created by the mammal brain or limbic system. Now, the whole point of emotions is to indicate, is this environment good for you or not? If it's not, mammal brain creates emotions you don't like, such as anxiety, fear, anger. So you either run away from that situation or punch somebody in the face who is endangering you. I only have left brain, I only have right brain. The reality is that actually we all use both sides of the brain. And actually, for the things as creativity, both right and left hemispheres are important. but mainly complex functions actually. Not only both hemispheres are needed, but multiple brain regions are active if we were to image the brain. So we can't quite put down, right and left brain in that simplistic manner as that the model suggests. Now there is one actually fact which is quite correct about our right-left brain model, is that our right brain is much more interested in the big picture, and left brain is much more zoomed in. In other words, that there is some actual specialization on the right and left in order to kind of keep attention to different things. So if we kind of imagine, if we are preoccupied with something quite specific task, which the left brain would be left hemisphere would be interested in, that we at the same time there's something observing if that we don't get hit by a car or something else, right? So that part is to some extent true, but overall the right-left brain model is actually oversimplification, and it's not quite scientifically correct. So hope that answers that part.
I haven't been to a Funzing talk before, but a friend booked it, and I was caught by the word neuroscience. I think I wanted to learn some facts, because after finishing uni, there's not a lot of opportunity for that. I thought she was absolutely brilliant. She's very, very engaging, and it was quite simple to follow, and I learnt things about my brain. Yeah, I'd recommend it. I've seen one already that I'd like to come to again.
So the neuroscience talk was amazing. If you don't know anything about science, if you know lots about science, it was really accessible, great speaker, and just learnt a lot about the brain and why we make good, bad, whatever decision we make.
I've not been to a Funzing talk before, but it was absolutely brilliant. It just totally took me outside of my normal field, my normal environment, and it was really nice to be able to speak to somebody from a different environment and be able to ask them questions that I've always wanted to ask.